again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest or scariest thing that's ever happened to you that you can't tell anyone because they won't believe you? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
When I was about 7 years old, I had the nice uncle who was my neighbor. I was in my annoying kid phase and always was hyper-energetic, so my family had trouble keeping me occupied. I got really good grades, so they couldn't really force me to spend my time studying. My sibling was 5 years older and hence had his own group. Now this nice uncle was pretty friendly with me. I think he was 25 years old, but he still had so much patience when it came to me. He played with me, gave me loads of attention. He also made me sit on his lap once and told me not to tell this to anyone. The next day he told me to lift my top up. I said no, but he tried to do it himself in the guise of playful tickling. I didn't really understand any of it, but I knew that it was somehow wrong, so I stopped going over. My parents even asked me about it, but I didn't know how to verbalize everything, so I said nothing to them ever. Now, looking back, I'm so glad I got out of that situation. I used to work in a small office. The front door led straight to the street and was unlocked during office hours. There was a front desk and a security camera. One day, my coworker and I stayed late after everyone else had gone and locked the door as we left. The following day, some electronic appliances were missing. Obviously, we'd been robbed, but the mystery was that the windows were open from inside. When the police checked the camera footage, they found that a man armed with a knife had gone inside, locked himself in the toilet, and waited until the evening. When he came out, my coworker and I were still there, which he didn't seem to expect. He can be seen on one corner of the video stalking us, waiting for us to leave, all the while holding his knife. We never noticed anything. I was about 6 or 7 in my home with my brother and my dad. We were all doing our own things. My dad was watching TV in the living room, my brother playing in the bedroom, and I was in the kitchen with a coloring book. There's a hallway that connects all 3 of these rooms together, so it wasn't that difficult to reach each other. I was just coloring and eating some candy, I believe, when there was this huge crash in my brother's room. I went to see what had happened, walked past the living room door, and into my brother's room. It was empty of my brother and everything was in place where it should have been. So I went back to the living room to ask my dad what had happened. But he wasn't there either. The house was completely empty, even though I had just walked past my dad, who was sitting in his chair smoking a cigarette. I had checked all the other rooms in the house for them, then checked again. So I went outside to the back porch. It was late at night already, but it was so quiet. Not even a bug was making any noise. We lived in the country, so it wasn't uncommon to see a few animals up close here and there, but I had never seen anything like this before. It was a white deer just standing in the middle of the yard, staring in my direction. It was surreal. When I saw that none of the vehicles were gone, I ran back inside to look again. Both my dad and brother were back in the living room and bedroom where they first were. I asked my dad where they went, and he said he hadn't moved from the living room. My childhood was pretty shitty, and I don't remember a lot, but this is something I'll never forget. It scared the hell out of me then, and still confuses me now thinking about it. I was on a bike ride with my friends through an apartment complex. We had gone there about 5 times and knew it quite well. There were 2 things weird about it. First, there was this man, which his phone to his face, like he was on speaker but never said anything. He always watched us as we biked past. When he noticed the spot we usually rode, he stood in our way, like literally would walk to where we rode and stand. This may have been because we rode street on BMX, but I don't think so. Then one day we got split up, one of my friends with me and the other on his own. We rode around looking for my other friend but couldn't find him. Eventually we found him. He was biking toward us fast. We slowed down and asked where he was. He said that a guy had been following him in a truck. He was quite shook up and Someone called the police. They arrived and could not find the truck, and nobody thought of mentioning the man. We never saw the man with the phone or the truck again, and we never went back to that complex. A few years ago, my brother and I were driving a 15-hour drive overnight across 3 provinces in Canada to meet up with our parents and other family at our grandmother's house. It was summer and it was rainy and flooding a lot on the roads that year, so we had to go off the main route that we would take, Trans-Canada Highway. And we're taking some more rural roads we never usually drove on this trip. We've driven it many times. In the middle of Saskatchewan at around 2 to 3 a.m., we were on a road called Lewis Riel Trail. We had noticed and made some comments to each other about no one being around, and so we're hoping that the roads weren't closed or redirected up ahead again. We both had noticed it just seemed like the road was totally deserted, but also it wasn't the main highway, so we thought maybe that was why there was no one around. As we were going along, we started to notice dead deer on the side of the road, quite a few. I remember saying something about hoping not to hit one. Then suddenly we were on a strip of road for a solid 5 to 10 minutes when both sides of the road were absolutely covered in deer, literal piles of dead deer, on top of each other, mangled together, eyes open and shining in the headlights, clearly dead, the way they were piled and twisted up like backwards, neck and feet up in the air and shit. None in the middle of the road, though. None of them splattered like they'd been hit by vehicles, no blood or gore, just hundreds of intact, dead deer bodies lining and piling up on top of each other on both sides of the road. I remember just staring at them and looking over at the dead piles on the other side of the road on occasion, and one of us saying something about being in between walls of dead deer. It sounds totally fucked up, but my brother remembers it too, feeling like we were in a daze or something. Like in hindsight, it should have really freaked us out, but I just remember staring at them and seeing their eyes shining and remember thinking something like it looked like they were all looking back at me, wondering why there were so many, wondering why no one else was around, but really just not saying anything and just mindlessly driving through for several minutes. It wasn't until after we were past them and there were other vehicles and semi-trucks passing by us again that we sort of snapped out of it and said, "That was really fucked up. What was that?" I'd been taking photos of everything that trip, random clouds, cows in the field, my feet on the dashboard, but I didn't think for a second to take a picture of this bizarre road lined with dead deer on both sides, because I was like not thinking properly when it happened. For some reason, me and my brother talk about this often. It bothers us now because we both remember how weird it was, but saying it to the other people never seemed to justify the absurdity. I don't think people believe it happened, but we both witnessed it and felt the same thing.
Alright guys, I hope you're doing well. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, it's 2 days away, so I hope you get to spend it with family, and I'll make more reminders of that over the next day or two. But I did want to say hello to a good little doggo named Honeybun, so thanks for listening. And also Little Threat 88. Hey, how are you? So again, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and if you don't see a video before Thursday, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
I received an out-of-the-blue package in the post early in the morning. It was a random gift of a necklace from my aunt, who lives in another country. She has never before or since sent me a random gift without reason. Birthday, sure, but never a random no-reason gift. With it, there was a note. "We all kiss this charm to give you luck. You need it today. All our love, aunt, uncle, cousin. I was late leaving the house that morning because of my new lucky gift arriving unexpectedly. I missed my bus and had to walk 5 miles to school. Ugh, some lucky charm, eh? I arrived to school obviously late, and as I opened the door to the auditorium, the building collapsed in on itself. Many children were very seriously hurt, some lifelong injuries. I later found out my desk was right at the center of the collapse. There was nothing left of it. The debris on my designated desk were huge. I'd have died if I hadn't been late to school because that random gift of luck. I asked my aunt why she sent that necklace. She doesn't know what made her do it or why she felt I needed luck. She just felt like I did. I never removed it for years. It was only a cheap bit of costume jewelry. Eventually the chain snapped and I lost it, and honestly, freak deaths have followed me since. Was at my grandpa-in-law's cemetery. I just gotten into a first huge ever fight with my husband. His grandpa became my father figure in short time he was in my life, so I went to his grave and talked to him and told him I was upset and why. I needed help. Our family tradition is to always clean it up, the whole thing. So we bring small plastic shopping bags or trash bags with us to put the trash in. Well, I'm alone and I was headed toward a section, and I had bent over a soldier's grave and was cleaning it up when I suddenly felt like I was being watched by something evil and negative. I stood up quickly and looked around. Mind you, where his cemetery is, it's nothing but cow fields on 3 out of 4 sides, so it's open. Well, one side has woods and goes to a person's property. It felt like whatever it was in the woods. There's nothing there, not even a squirrel. I went back to work on the soldier's grave and I suddenly hear the wind pick up and something run at me from the woods. I spun around quickly and literally felt someone grabbing my shouldering and telling me everything was going to be okay, and like I was in some force field of a bubble and I was going to keep going, but the voice said, "I can't hold this much longer. You have to get out of here." I am running back to my car at this point, and I get in my car, lock the doors, and turn on my Pandora, and it literally glitched down the playlist to turn on Blackpink's song "See You Later." My grandpa-in-law never said goodbye, but always "I'll see you later." Didn't matter if it was on the phone or in person. I sped home and told my husband it's never happening again. And outside of one person and my husband, no one believes me that happened. Never have had weird feelings like that again from the cemetery either. We do still clean it. We just cleaned it up back in October after my mother-in-law's funeral was over. Husband's family thought we were weird. Others were saying we were super nice. Last September, I was driving, sitting at a red light at the front of the line. In the left-hand lane, the street was stripped at a big two-way street, but no one was driving the direction closest to me, which would be going toward my right. On the far side of the street, going toward my left, a black pickup truck drove by inexplicably. The black pickup made a hard left turn across multiple lanes of traffic, straight toward me, going a full 35 to 40 mph. Thankfully, there's a small median that he drives over, which makes him slow down and gives me time to drive out of the way. But I've literally no idea what happened. I got a good look at the guy, and he was wearing all black and was snapping around, saying something very stiffly. After this, he reversed back onto his side of the road and drove away. I cannot think of an explanation as to why he did this, other than that he was trying to run into me. Can't shake the feeling there was something going on there I don't know about. Always had felt really strange to me, and has caused me a lot of anxiety. When I was around 9 to 12, I lived in a house where a family member lived and died alone. The house was old and creepy. Just to give an idea, in the basement there was a dentist's room, old kind from the 80s or 90s, looked like from a horror movie. Then upstairs 3 rooms, of which 2 were locked with a bunch of old stuff. The guy was collecting large clocks. My room was upstairs in the open area, so you could walk in straight from the stairway to my room. I always heard weird stuff there, steps, noises. One night I woke up to a sound of someone breathing loudly next to my ear. I was terrified. Then I looked to my left, and there was something standing looking at me. I thought it was my brother, who used to sleepwalk. I was like, "No, it's a dream, you must sit up." I sat up, and this person was still there. I hated living there because I always felt like someone's presence or someone breathing next to my ear. A dude tried to roofie me, and I didn't know how to handle it. I just gave the drink back to the bar and said something was in it and I'd like another. Then I continued to hang out all night with them and my other friend. I would shoot death stares at him, and he just fell silent all night with a face of pants-shitting fear. Should have called the cops. Only reason I caught it was that I returned to the group faster than he expected, I guess. and when I went to grab my drink off the bar, he handed me the one he was holding and told me it was mine. We had ordered 2 or 3 of the same drink, so this struck me oddly. I took a peek in the glass, and inside the fireball was a small brown thing rapidly dissolving. Reminded me of the algae wafers I would feed my fish. Definitely not an algae wafer. I have a bipolar disorder, so I sometimes need 1 or 2 months of hospitalization in a mental health clinic because I tend to resist to medication and need to change my treatment. In 2018, I had a very severe depressive episode, heavy suicidal impulses, crippling melancholia, all the package. But I was living in another city at the time, so I had to resign myself to going to see a psychiatrist, whom I did not know. At first, everything went normally, until she had me hospitalized because I felt really bad. The clinic had a good reputation and the medical staff was cool first, but after 24 hours, they took all my medication away from me and forced me to take a new one, which I didn't know, a very large quantity. I have almost no memory of the 2 months I spent there. I don't know what they gave me, but I was a real zombie. I had terrible hallucinations. I saw blurry all the time. I could no longer speak or walk, and I remember very well begging them to stop giving me these meds, but they never listened to me. They confiscated all my belongings, my papers, my clothes, and stole all my money and jewelry. When I finally got out of this hell, I tried to go to the police for talking about these abuses, but no one believed me. Also, the psychiatrist was quite famous there and always denied everything I said. The worst thing is that my family came to see me 2 or 3 times and they didn't notice anything strange. Even today, I sometimes doubt if it really happened or not. This will be buried, but a lot of people don't believe me, so I don't really tell it anymore. When I was about 15, I went to Virginia with my mom and dad to see one of my sisters. She was in the Navy and stationed at Norfolk. She had a baby a few months prior, and we went to meet her. Because we were in Virginia, and I was fascinated with history, I wanted to visit the historic towns of Jamestown and Williamsburg. So the second day we were there, we went to Williamsburg. My sis told us about one of the churches where founding fathers would sit, and I wanted to go in. It was very neat and nicely air-conditioned. It was 102 with 100% humidity, LOL. After we left the church, there were gravestones that my mom and I went to look at. While we were standing there, probably about 2 minutes at that point, I started feeling a tightness around my neck. The tightness kept getting stronger, and I was at that point starting to suffocate. I looked at my mom, who looked like the wind was knocked out of her. She eventually manages to push me, and I grab her, and we both manage to break free of whatever it was. After we catch our breaths, she notices I have redness around my neck. When she gets a closer look, she sees a full handprint. She immediately takes a picture and shows me, and it is a handprint, a very large handprint. She proceeds to take a picture with my hand over the handprint, and the handprint is so large I can't match it. After my dad and brother-in-law come over and I see I have redness around my neck, my dad immediately asks why I have redness on my neck. I tell him, but he doesn't believe me. Not only do I put my hand over the handprint to show him, he does the same, and even his hand is smaller. He, of course, tells me and my mom nothing happened, and we proceed to leave. My mom takes a quick snapshot of the graveyard before we do. When we look back at the photos later, we notice a silhouette by a tree that was near the gravestone we were looking at. Mind you, this was all in broad daylight. After a few days, we get back home and show my older sis the pics. She believed us. She was the only one. My brothers didn't. A day after we settle, my mom downloads the pics on the computer. The next day, we went to look at all the pictures, but those pictures of my neck and the graveyard were completely gone. My mom's camera at the time held photos for 2 weeks before they permanently deleted. When we went to look to see the photos on her camera, at that point 6 days later, they were also gone. She tried to download the pics again, but those images were permanently lost. Mom and I only have the memories, but when I tell people, most think it's a made-up ghost story. I can tell you it was real, and I'll never forget it. I was staying in a friend's house one night and was sleeping on the couch. I had a dream where I was camping out in the woods. It was night, and I was in a tent sitting underneath a bunch of pine trees in a dark night sky. It was peaceful, but out of the quietness I heard a large creature starting to move around outside the tent. I stayed still, hoping it would go away, but it kept getting closer and finally was standing over my tent. Out of desperation, I planned to shine my flashlight as it in hopes it might scare it away, but as soon as I did it, it illuminated a silhouette of this giant alien-looking creature that let out this extremely bizarre, terrifying sound, and immediately ripped open the door to my tent and started dragging me out and away from my tent. In my panic, I woke up shouting, and I realized I was being pulled off the button of the couch by my feet. As soon as I woke up, the pulling stopped, but I was already off the couch. It was pitch black, no one was in the room, and my friend was dead asleep in the other room. I jumped back up on the couch and covered myself in blankets. I suppose it's possible that I might have thrown myself off, but it's considering how I went off feet first at such a fast speed, it leaves me wondering. A few years back, I had several bouts of sleep paralysis, which were completely new to me at the time. I was staying the night at an ex-girlfriend's small studio apartment when one struck, and as I was struggling to gain control of my limbs or open my eyes, I could hear someone fiddling with the doorknob. Given that she was next to me sleeping and nobody else would be coming in at 3 a.m., I was absolutely terrified, trying to will myself out of it. Very suddenly, I gained control again and am able to move. I immediately get up and walk into the front area near the door, and through the open blinds I saw a man crawling on all floors, with completely golden eyes and very similar skin to Gollum from Lord of the Rings. When I looked into the person's eyes, I instantly felt this intense wave of calm come over me. Thought to myself, oh, never mind. Then turned around and went back to bed and fell into a deep sleep. I'm fairly sure this was the only hallucination or some kind of waking dream, but I know I was awake and physically out of bed because my ex asked me about it the next morning, why I went out of the front room and returned the way I did. I've never before or since had any kind of similar experience, and it creeps me out to imagine what it could have been. When I was around 14 or 15, I got up one night for a piss. I heard someone screaming outside. The back of my parents' house backed onto some woods. Then it stopped, and a few seconds later I heard the scream again. This happened a few times and then just stopped. I figured it was nothing, but did tell my mom the next day. That day we went on a family holiday for a week and thought nothing more of it. A few days after we got home, my mom sits me down to talk, and apparently a woman had taken a shortcut through the woods on the way back from the pub and fell into the canal. What I heard was her going under, surfacing and screaming, then going back under again. When the screaming stopped, it was because she had drowned. My mom asked if I needed to speak to someone about it. I started to cry and said I should have helped her, and felt terribly guilty for a while afterwards. I realized later on that there was really nothing I could have done. Years ago, me and my cousin hung out a lot, drinking and smoking and playing video games. He lived in the last house on the right down a dead-end road in an area where it was somewhat suburban and also somewhat country. He had a river right behind his house, and it was huge or anything, but it had decent current. On the other side of this river, there's a small island and a river on the other side of the island. It's kind of shaped like a triangle. So he calls me one day and tells me I have to come over to hang out because he was scared. Asked him what happened, and he told me his dog started freaking out the night before and growling and snarling and barking. Usually this dog was dead silent unless she had to go out, then she would whine a little bit. He said he kept hearing splashing while he was outside, like someone throwing rocks into the water. And before the splashing, his dog started freaking out. So I go over there. We're hanging outside out back, smoking a cigarette and shooting the shit. His dog started sniffing around like crazy and then looks at the island and starts going nuts. Me and him turn on our phone flashlights and start checking out the island to see if we could see anything. We're scanning the island back and forth, and we both go, "Bro, do you see that?" big-ass pair of red eyes staring at us. I remember we just froze and shit bricks like, what the f*** is that? So the island is pretty much the same level as his backyard, and these eyes were at the same level, like a 4 to 5 foot level. We proceeded to watch these eyes raise to about 8 or 9 feet above the ground, and both of us got nervous. Like, is it a fucking bear? What is that thing? The eyes then just vanished, and we heard this thing move around the island heavily. His dog starts whimpering and whining out of nowhere. Huge rocks started getting thrown at us, like big-ass stones the size of small pumpkins start hitting the water, and for the next hour and a half, we heard this thing move back and forth through the trees and throwing things into the water. Then it just stopped and it went silent. I must mention that this house is old as shit, and we're pretty sure it's haunted because it constantly sounds like someone slamming doors and stomping around the house, when it would be just me and him, and the doors would be locked. We also heard a faint talking when there would be no one else in the house. To this day, we don't know what it was. We initially thought it was a bear because there were a few bear sightings in the area, but now, would a bear throw mini boulders into the water like that? There was no bear sounds either. It was completely silent out that night, with no birds, no frogs, no crickets, etc. When I was age 7 or 8, I was walking home alone from school one day. A long, light blue sedan pulled up to the curb next to me. The passenger side window was down, and the driver mentioned and motioned with his hand and called me to come over to the car. I just stood still in the sidewalk looking at him. He said he had a big bag of candy next to him on the seat, and said if I got in the car I could have as much of the candy as I wanted. I told him no, that my mom had told me to never take candy from a stranger. Then he said it was okay because he knew my mom, and she said it was okay for him to give me a ride home. He said, come on, get in the car, I'll drive you home. Something about him made me feel terrified, so I took off running, turned at the corner, and ran home. When I looked back, I saw the blue car drive past my street and keep going. I never told my mom because I thought I would get in trouble. Weird how kids think. I never did tell anyone.